Hello, and welcome to another episode of Set-4-Life Conversations, where we help you get your mind right and your money right by discussing life strategies for the everyday person. I'm your host, Thomas Lacoma, and each episode will spend some time with financial advisor, pastor, and motivational speaker, published author, and former college athlete, George Thompson, as he shares with us wisdom that you can put into practice today. In today's episode, we discuss several topics related to real estate. George shares specific strategies for home buying and real estate investing at each of the 5 stages of financial being. Okay, wow. How you doing today, George?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
So my wife and we're in the process of looking for a new home for our family. This will be like our third property that we purchased together. So we've been pretty
Oh,
blessed.
wow.
And it'll be the second one that we're selling. So when we got married, we bought, and then we moved. So this will be like our third time moving because we just ran out of space with the family size. So today on my mind, I really have real estate. So you and I have had a wide range of conversations about real
Yes.
estate and strategies around getting properties, utilizing real estate and wealth building, all that. So the way I like to break it down today is maybe what we can do is take the 5 levels of financial being, which we've
Yes.
talked about in almost every episode,
Yes.
and talk about what strategies for real estate look like at each of those levels. So let's start with struggling. This is probably not a time that somebody can acquire a property, but they could still be preparing, right?
Right. So that is a great question. And
Yeah.
also, Thomas, I am asked about real estate all the time. And it's very interesting because sometimes there's good economies, there's bad economies, not bad economies. There's challenging economies, like there's a challenging time now, but there are always opportunities. So
Hmm.
you always want to stay ready and be ready to do these things. So first of all, even though we've gone over it before, even though it may be your first time, so I want to just kind of just clear up the different areas. So there's 5 levels of financial being. The first is struggling. That means your inability to pay current bills. Then there's steady. You have just enough to pay your bills. So we're going to go into housing with that in a moment.
Hmm.
But if something snap, crackles, or pops, you fall down to struggling. And then there's solid. That means you've been working somewhere for a while, doing pretty well. Um, putting in your 401k, having emergency savings, things like that. Surplus is extra money. So then I'm just kind of cutting across the field on you. That means you may already have a house and you're looking at getting another house, and we may look like upsizing or downsizing, or we're going to call it spreading the wings.
Hmm.
And then there's service where you're not concerned with finances at all. Not concerned, but you're just at a level where you're philanthropy, like where you say, hey, you know what? Maybe this house I can use to do this, or I can do that, or
Hmm.
there's just different areas. So we want to be able to talk to you on all 5 levels. Then also, I just want to let you know, there's also says 4 stages of financial growth. And that also
Hmm.
plays a very big role in what we're doing. So I also just want to take a moment and explain that as well. So
Okay.
if you're watching us, if you're just listening to us, we'll also have this graphic that will be also on that you'll
Yeah,
also
I'll
have
share
access
this
to
graphic in the show
on the
notes. Yep.
site if you're just listening to us audio.
Hmm.
So there's 4 stages of financial growth. So the first is spending control. That means we want to have a budget of some kind. So now to answer your original question, if someone is struggling, we need to make sure we have a budget and we see how we're going to do that. Then we want to eliminate debt, because when you purchase a home, you want to have, when you purchase a home, they're going to ask you something called a debt to income ratio. And you want to
Hmm.
make sure that you have that debt to income ratio in line. So we want to reduce our debt and we want to rate in our income. So there's debt, there's your budget, right? So you have
Hmm.
all your expenses and then you have your income.
Hmm.
You want your income to be higher than what your outgo is. So your income is higher than your outgo.
Hmm.
Creates a margin, and that's the money that you save. Then we use some of that money. So I'm going to do some of that money. Remember, you have your income
Hmm.
and then you have your outgo, and there should be a
Hmm.
margin in between those. The money that you save, we need to use some to pay down debt, and then we use some to invest. Hence the term say vesting. So we need to be vesting means saving and investing, because we're saving in an emergency fund, but then also we're having money to invest. Oh my goodness. What's number 4 say? Building a wealth machine. So now does everybody see what we're talking about? When we get up to solid surplus in these areas, that's why we want to start building this machine. But we actually want to start at any time, and we may start when we're actually struggling. So we want to actually start when we do these. Okay. So now some general rules about getting a house and getting real estate. First is this: you need to get your financial house in order. There is right now in getting a financial house in order. Before you get a house, we call it getting your we always call it getting your file in order, getting things in order. There was a famous Negro poet that had a song, and he said, "If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready." So we should right now start getting our file together. So this is what your file should include. You should have, first of all, your budget, which we already went over, that's showing this, because you're going to go through something when you buy a home called underwriting. So our goal is to see how much home you qualify for. But before we find that out, we got to figure out what our budget is, because if you're paying, I'm just using $2,000 a month as a mortgage. Or is that a good number? 2,000. Now, by the way, I live in California, so that's not that realistic. But
You get like a small little basement for that, right?
Yeah, a closet. They'll be like having a closet. You know? There was a so it would be very so if your mortgages are 4,000, then let's just make the math easy. That means it'd be twice this, you know. So if you're paying 4,000, if you're looking at a house and then your mortgage would be $2,000 a month, then you want to be at least paying that in rent or saving that amount. So if you're renting somewhere right now, going over struggling, steady, solid, I'm going to plug that back in. But if you're renting somewhere right now and you're paying $1,600 a month, then you want to start saving the other 400 so that you know that you can afford to pay $2,000 a month. Does that make sense? So then what happens is we want to start getting our margin and saving. Then we want to have an emergency fund. Because when you rent, you want to know something very interesting about renting is that if you have a problem with your stove, you know who you call? You call the landlord. You know what? If something becomes ajar, I'm just using these terms because I think I own a few properties. They call the landlord. We have people that call over all kinds of things, and then we have to kind of let them know what our responsibility is and theirs. But you do that. But when you own a home, guess who the landlord is? When you pick up the phone and call, guess who you're calling? Yourself. If you have a plumbing issue, you have to fix it. And just so you know, it's typically a couple grand when you first do these things. So we want to have an emergency fund. Then we want to have a fund that saves, we call it wealth building, as you already see on the slide that I have earlier. But you want to have a wealth building fund, and you should always have that. So remember, one of the nuggets you want to walk with today is that you want to have a wealth building fund. That may be, and remember we also told people to have an emergency fund. Then everyone said, well, why do I need an emergency fund? And then you look at the situation we're in. I'm going to use the coronavirus for a good, what do you think, 10 years, 15 years? I'm going to use that for a good 15 years.
Showed a lot of people
the importance of shutting the entire country down, literally. Our economy down for 60 days, for this period of time. And doing that. So we want to have an emergency fund. Then we have a wealth building fund. And we always teach business owners and everything. That may be to buy a house. It may be right now. We're finding people to buy businesses right now. But you want to have a wealth building fund, and then you want to be able to do that. So we have a budget. We have an emergency fund. We have our wealth building fund. Then also we want to get our credit together. So you want to run your credit. I'm going to do a high level overview, and then we're going to have much deeper class in this, but you want to have your credit run. And then we'll go over all the names. These names, have you ever heard these names before? TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. So you want to pull all 3 credit reports so that you want to make sure your credit is together, because your credit is defined as your interest rate is determined by your credit. Your income, how much income, did I say it twice? I got to say it 3 times. Your income determines how much home you can afford. So you want to be able to have those in a file. Then you want to find a lender, hopefully a broker. So you're going to find someone that can look at several different areas. I always get at least 3 quotes. They'll say, you qualified for this amount. What amount do you want to use today, Thomas? Do you want to use
That's it.
500,000? You want to use million? What do you
We
want to
go
use?
with 300,000.
Okay, we're going to use
Yep.
300,000. Okay,
Yeah.
now back to California. Now we down to
Maybe
looking
we
at.
should go to 450.
All
At
right,
least you can get like condo with that, right?
yeah, let's compromise. 'Cause I was going to say 500. You said 300, so we're going to say 400. Now
Hmm.
again, if you're in a place in a state or somewhere where you can get someone for 200,000, understand we're using 400,000. So you just take that number and cut it in half. Okay,
Hmm.
don't and doing it. And also, I want you to think ahead because actually, when I start using illustrations in a minute, I'm going to bring them up in the million and the 2 million range because I'm going to talk to you guys about playing Monopoly. So we want to be able to go up in these numbers. So if a property is $400,000 and they say, I'm sorry, you qualified for $400,000, then those are the properties we want to start looking at and finding out what we can afford.
And
Now,
actually, an
go ahead.
interesting thing about that, and I think this is why I think the thing you said about if you're renting right now, save the difference between what you think your mortgage payment is for several months to see whether you can do that. Because one thing I've noticed is people end up buying more house than they should have bought
Yeah,
because they go to the realtor and they're qualified for say 400, and they tell the realtor that's where they start at 400.
right.
So guess what's going to happen? You're going to start seeing things that are over 400, and then they fall in love with these things. Then they go to the lender and say, is there a way we can, move
Right.
this around? And so they end up taking maybe a loan that shouldn't be the kind of loan they should be doing it
Exactly.
with. And then you get in that house and you can't even furnish it because you're
Right.
like house rich and like,
Cash poor. Actually, it's
cash
worse
poor,
than
right?
that. And then, by the way, everybody, I love California. I love everybody in California. But what you just described is exactly it.
Hmm.
Somebody looks at a house and they qualify for 400,000, and they start at 400,000, and then they call they find houses that are 450 and try to negotiate down. And the people are like, and then what they do is they get frustrated because they said, I put in 10 offers and I've been rejected. I'm like, they wanted 550 and you gave them a 350 offer.
Hmm.
They're insulted. I wrote them there's things that we'll later on get into in our advance. We have a real estate class where we do it, like where we want you actually to write a letter to the people, but
Hmm.
don't write a letter for 350 if they want 550, like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need a little $10,000. You know what I mean? Like, in
Yeah.
these areas, and there's techniques you can use, but you got to be on somewhat equal
Yeah.
footing.
You got to
Like,
respect
yeah,
them
you
as a seller, right? Yeah.
right. Just like you said, you're right. Just like you right now, Thomas, you're selling your home. Like,
Hmm.
how would you feel if somebody offered you $120,000
Yeah.
under what your asking is? And by the way, you got 20 other offers, but then you're going to get ones that are very close. And then you may, like in the area, and then you'll see like if one's an all cash offer, if it's investor, or there'll be different people that'll come,
Hmm.
investors. And then you'll also maybe have single family, or you may decide not to sell your home, to rent it and then have other people, and then change it to different things. But just that you know all your options, and we'll go through all your options earlier. But the
Yeah.
first thing is we got to qualify. And then you remember the word qualify right. We want to
Mm.
qualify the correct way and have so we find out what we qualify for.
Yeah.
Then and then this is the best part. I want to say it. Then we want to start measuring out deals. We
Mm.
want to start looking at how we're going to buy real estate. So what I'm doing is I'm finding out what's available. So typically, if you're going to buy, the first question is if you're going to buy a single family home or a condo or something that you're going to live in, then you want to find something that you like. And then we're going to talk about being an investor as well. But Thomas, did you want to ask me another question? I just want to kind of get the qualification.
Yeah, yeah. Let me just, if anybody is new here, welcome to the show. We release new episodes every Friday morning. So if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, um, feel free to reach out to us. We cover things like finances, productivity, biblical stewardship, or anything else that comes to your imagination as you're watching us. Just look for the link in the show notes where you can drop us a voice message. We make a point to listen to everything that comes through, but that's a great way to give us your input. I think one of the things that we were talking about qualifying for a certain amount. The other point that you made, which is really important, which I think especially first-time home buyers don't consider, is that uh, owning when you own the property, it's not just the mortgage that is your home cost, right? So again, if you've been qualified for that 400, you probably want to go below that because you're gonna have stuff like, I'll tell you the story. Our first house that we bought, we ended up buying a two family. At initially we were not using it as a rental. I live with my mother-in-law, and so she was in one unit and we were in the other unit. um, Literally the day after we closed, there was a sewage leak in the basement, and that
Wow.
hadn't come up in inspection, hadn't come up in any other way. There was no way to catch that beforehand, but we had to have the resources to get a plumber in to clean that up. That's not something that you can let say, hey, we're going to deal with that in
Oh
a month.
no.
That's like
I'm
it was
sorry.
an
By the way,
emergency.
did we tell you we have kids? Yeah, kids
Yeah.
stuff has to be done handled in about 2 hours. So anyway,
Exactly.
go ahead.
So it's things like that. And then I remember that I had to become like a Home Depot like ninja. I'd never been to Home Depot as many times as I had because initially I'm not a handy person, so I was like resistant to doing stuff. So I was always like, who can we call? Let's call a plumber. But that racks up really quickly. Eventually, I think the
Right.
two things I was always told is, if it's plumbing or electrical, that's when you immediately call the professional. But
Yes.
if it's something like, fixing a little nick in a wall, or like just look it up on YouTube. Like the other day when we were trying to get my house ready, I figured out how to fix some siding on the side of the house because somebody
Right.
had a video about how siding goes on. And like,
Correct.
I watched it and I was able to do it. So it's kind of like making that balance of, you're going to have to have ownership of the property in terms of that now you're responsible for the upkeep of it,
Okay.
which means there's a financial piece to it and there's a time piece to it. So
Right.
when you're thinking, fantasizing about owning a home, you have to take into account these realities.
Right.
Um,
And can I
so,
jump in here
so
real quick?
yeah,
Can I
let's
jump
talk
in here
about
real
that.
quick about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Yeah, because
first
we're
of
talking
all,
about that first time home buy. Let's get drill
yes.
into that. Yeah.
So that's why the expenses of all those. And then I want to just say this so that I don't want anyone to become overwhelmed. We're doing high level. We actually teach very specific classes on real estate called real estate. So
Hmm.
first of all, you pay a mortgage. You also pay, there's something called property taxes, and we'll go through
Hmm.
all of these deeper before. Then you also have to have insurance on the home. And then later on, when we talk about investors, you also want to get a personal liability policy in case a fight
Hmm.
happens on the property, something happens, different things. So they do that so that the insurance company will fight that battle. Then also, if you own a condo, townhome, there's something called HOA, and that's homeowner association. So we want to factor in all those because they actually factor those in as well. And so we want to find that out. So we want to find out what we qualify for. Then I'm going to hit the deal section in a moment, hopefully, and that's how we look at properties in these areas. But
Hmm.
also, I want to make sure I covered this so we
Oh, before
understand the
you
mindset.
go into further, like in the five levels, at what level would you say somebody should actually be considering buying a home? Because in
Oh,
struggling and steady, you're trying to get your house in order, right? It's probably around solid or something like that where you would be thinking.
I love us talking, man, because that's why I was pulling this up to say,
Mhm.
if you're struggling and you can't pay your current bills, what you need to do is the first things we said: spending control, debt elimination, and finding out. Do most times when someone's struggling, the income needs to rise. If you're making a certain amount and you can't pay the bills and everything, we need to raise the income. So then that's part of us doing something. Like there are people that become property managers of properties to learn how it works, to learn how to get the people going. The things like you said, getting who your handyman is, because
Mhm.
eventually you have to, if you become a real estate investor, you have to have a
Mhm.
dream team. So I
Yeah.
have a dream team, and going things. So I have guys that are plumbing. I have guys that can do drywall. I have guys that do very specific things I want to have done,
Mhm.
and they'll send them over to different properties, and then they can do them. And I know their pricing. I know how they do it. So everything's very uniform. And then if there's
Mhm.
problems, and we don't fix things cheap, we don't fix the problem. We look ahead and say, like, wait, let's buy quality because I
Mhm.
plan on keeping these. These are also part of me building generational wealth. So most of the properties I have are actually for my children. So for when they when they go to college for them to pay. But actually, I'm thinking past that now. Probably another
Mm,
2 years. I'm thinking for their income and for their retirements as opposed
mm.
to for college. So thinking through that.
Yeah.
That's topic for another day. But let's look at this.
That's the
Struggling.
building wealth machine topic,
There you go.
which we're gonna get to soon.
But you asked about. But we're talking now
Yeah.
about struggling. If someone is struggling, let's fix these issues, and then let's work on this to get to steady. The challenge with steady is if you have to work overtime. This is what happened. We learned this. You remember how we said if you're paying rent of $1,600 and $2,000 a month is how
Mhm,
much your mortgage will be. Why won't you start saving 400 was? We learned this in '08 and '09. You guys know in '08 and '09 the markets went down
mhm.
in real estate. Is there were people that had to work overtime in order to pay their mortgage. That mortgage needs to be a comfortable number. Because
Mm,
actually, when we get a mortgage, we plan on paying that off in 15 years or less. So we want
yeah.
to pay over and above that mortgage. So we got to get a comfortable mortgage. So when someone's also in the steady mode before they get to solid, because that's when you actually want to start buying a home. If you want to buy one earlier and you're in those other areas steady, you may look at two things: partnering. You brought this up earlier, but if you have a brother, sister, a mother, someone else that you can buy, then you can do that. When I was
Yeah.
teaching our young adults that were in at our church, and also I just teach, is there are people that have, because I'm saying men and women, and I'm saying this also. I'm not saying you can't do it if you're married or not, but
Mhm,
that they're looking at duplexes and triplexes, and those are
mhm,
2 unit, you guys, 2 unit and 3 unit buildings, and
mhm,
buying them with three other people.
mm.
So, and then we see who has credit and then the income so everyone can qualify. So let's say
Yeah.
two steady people buy a duplex, then
Mm,
they're in there and they don't have to, because I'm letting you know now, if you have a tenant in there and you have a problem, you got to fix it. You got to fix it right away. If it's
mhm,
you guys, you can kind of start having a plan to fix things up. Then the
mhm.
two of you go out and buy another one a year later, and then you just split them. You say, hey, okay, this is yours,
Yeah,
this is mine.
that's actually similar. Another strategy for our first home. The reason we did the two family initially was because we had my mother in law living with us, but then uh, I lost my job right after getting married and closing on the house. So our income was cut, significantly right away.
Right.
The advantage of having the two family is what we did is we moved out of the top unit and went into the unit with my mother-in-law, and then we rented out the top unit, and that
Right.
helped to close out a gap. So it gave us more options
Right.
to be thinking a little bit out of the box, especially for that first property.
Right.
If you can think in these creative ways of how can we maximize the situation, because maybe at that stage you might not yet have kids, or your family is a little younger and a little more flexible. You may be able to do different things like George is saying.
Right. And I just, because when I was single, there's nothing against it now. And in a moment, these kids are probably going to run downstairs and all this. My goal was to buy a property every year, and I was moving all the time. I was moving a lot.
Hmm.
Now with kids, you can't move, like you have stuff now. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's just a little bit more, and they're in school, so it's just a little bit easier, that
Yeah.
particular way. Because when you own a home and when you're buying a home that you're going to live in, you get what's called owner occupied financing.
Hmm.
When you
The
get
rates are better.
financing for investment properties, you have to put down, typically you have to put down 20%. So I know now someone's going to say, "Oh no, I can do that and put down 10% or 5 or whatever you may tell us you
Mhm.
read or heard." But the interest rate is going to be a little bit more trickier. So what you want to do is, if you live in the property and get a lower interest rate, you can get to know the people. Now I'm talking about deals. You can get to know the environment, know the property, get everything under control for a year, then move to another one, and then start learning how to acquire
Mhm.
properties. And in doing
Mhm.
that, but I want to make sure I answer the question directly. So that's what we're doing in those areas. So if someone's struggling and steady, we're fixing the situation to get to solid. If we're solid, we either are buying our single, buying the home that we live in, and then we want to, in all these levels, start to become an investor
Mhm.
and buying other properties. So this is part of building a wealth machine. So I just want to, first of all, just talk about that. So we want to look at unique properties. So what we want to do is we want to find the deal. So what we want to do is we want to find, first of all, what we like to do. So I used to buy units, like 3 and 4 unit buildings, and I didn't buy a lot of 5, because then if they're above 5, they're commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
And it was very easy to market them. Like if you say, I'm renting an apartment, I'm just using these dollar figures, everybody. I'm in California, and this was 20 years ago, $1,200. It's
Mhm.
easier for me to find two people to pay $1,200 than it was then. It was just very easy for me to find that for a 2-bedroom, 900 square foot place. That's what it was very easy. It was very easy to find that in the market, and people are looking for that.
Mhm.
And so I was collecting rent. This is diversifying from 3 people. So that way, if one person moved, it didn't hurt as much. And then I would
Yeah.
live in one of the units, and I was the property manager. We'll get in an
Mhm.
advanced class of you never say you're the owner. You're always the property manager, and you have a certain way of dealing with people. And we have a
Yeah.
class on how to manage things. And this is the beauty of it. I used to teach a class called Money in Your Mailbox. Technology, since you guys don't know, Thomas is a really big technology guy. We're both nerds, but I lost my status, but I got it back at the Apple Store last year. Is this is we learn now. I look at how my assistant, how she manages the properties. She's using technology to do all of it. Like
Yeah.
like that before you had to do a lot of it, but this way now we call people, they come over, they're paid, they send us
Yeah.
pictures, we get the pictures back. Then we're using technology to pay them. I had a PO box where I receive all my rents. I receive all my rents electronically now.
Electronically. Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
electronic. I mean, down to virtual tours, to this,
Yeah.
to them when they're serious, them coming over, then us. It's just a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot easier than it was. Let's say 10 years. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
3 years. I'm gonna say 5 years
3 years.
ago. Yes.
Yeah, and just hold that thought. I was
Right.
just thought about something, but before we continue, I want to let everybody know that if you have a question you would like George to answer, it can be anything: finances, relationships, getting things done. There's a couple of ways that you can get in your questions to us. The first one is click the link in the show notes of this episode where you can leave us your question as a voice recording. You can do that right from your phone and we'll get it directly. The second is to follow George on Facebook. That's the best way to get in touch with him. The link will be in the show notes as well. And then you can also hit me up on any of my social media locations. I am at TZ Lucoma everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm most active on. So when you were talking about real estate, I actually thought about what just happened in terms of our home. And this is Zillow. I'm sure everybody who's been thinking about buying a home or even rentals is familiar with Zillow. When we bought our first home, my wife and I were trying to think about how did we used to learn about properties and like what a property looked like. You were very dependent on like a real estate agent sending you. She used to fax us like
Oh wow. Yeah.
sheets of
It's funny you went
of
those
the
things. I,
different
I remember
properties.
all this stuff. Right.
So today you can just go onto Zillow and like say, this is the town I'm looking on. This is the price range. And that's powerful from the buyer's perspective, but even from our perspective as a seller. I was telling George before we started the call, we got our house, staged and kind of fixed up really nicely.
It
And
does. It looks
then
really nice, by the
and
way.
then the realtor had a professional photographer come through and take the pictures. And so as soon as this property popped up on Zillow, our real estate agent started getting appointments because that's the power of the technology. It's like he doesn't have to kind of go out and like put signs and like market property here. Everybody's searching and everybody has these alerts that come up and tell them, hey, there's a property. So you can do that also as a buyer. You just put what you're looking for and have alerts
Right.
that tell you.
But see, so two things you're saying that I want all of our listeners and viewers to see is number one is you see how you stage the house. You're putting out your best foot effort. Also, timing. You guys,
Mm-hmm.
where's everybody right now? They're at home. Now,
Mm-hmm.
let me just say something about your house or everyone listening, your house if you have kids. Your house was fine because you got up in the morning, you got the kids dressed, you took them to school, you came back at night, and everything was efficient. But now that everybody's home all day, I think everybody's home just got about, I'm going to say 300 square foot smaller, or everything is smaller because everybody's
Yeah,
in the rooms and
our
everybody's
agent
doing
was
stuff.
like, you have to declutter. We actually got a storage unit and moved stuff
Right.
out, you know?
Because it is just like, I mean, your refrigerator, it's just like, my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times people open this refrigerator in a day right now? It's just like, it's just like, sorry, don't get me off on that, guys.
Yeah.
But my point is that now people are at home
Mm.
and they can look at their property and they're saying that, like, see, your home when you moved into it was your dream home. It's almost like car. And then now your children have grown, different
Hmm.
things have happened. where
And
you
it's not
say,
a
I'm going to
place, yeah.
move. But now there's someone, my prayers, they come over today or they find it today, is
Mhm.
your home is their dream
It's their
home.
dream home. Yeah.
So it's very interesting is that, do you know that when somebody buys a home, they actually don't buy a home. They actually have a room. I'm going to go first. And you guys, this is in our advanced class. I'm just going to give you some advanced today. There's
Mhm.
actually three. You always want to go one, two, three. Remember I said uniqueness? Like there's
Mhm.
certain things. The house that I live in right now,
Mhm.
me and my wife, when we got ready to walk into it, it's the last one on the corner. So there's no one behind. So we can play basketball out here. You know what I mean? Like it's the
Mhm.
last one. When you walk in, it's completely open. I turned to my wife and I said, would you like to put an offer right now? She said, we haven't even gone upstairs. We haven't looked at this. We haven't looked at. I walked in, saw the kitchen. I said, and our kids were 6 months. The twins were 6 months
Mhm.
old. I said, I'm prepared to put in an offer. And
Mhm.
this property was in foreclosure. So we'll get
Mhm.
into that later. But all the things, it just the kitchen, living room, dining room. I was prepared to buy the property
Mhm.
because I just from that. So think about that. So when you go over, so I just want to say this, and then I'll answer any other question. Yeah, when you go over to properties, I'm selling it right there that day. Like I'm like, oh, this house will sell. I can buy. I'm
Mhm.
going to buy it, but later on, I don't sell properties. I haven't sold a property since I've been married. Actually, my wedding anniversary is tomorrow. I'll be married
Oh,
17
happy
years.
anniversary.
Yes, thank
How
you.
many
And
years you said?
17 years
Wow. Yeah.
tomorrow,
So
and
you're, I think, 1 year behind us. We're going on 18. Yeah. I
right.
think we were 18 this year. Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that, people are like, oh, we just want to know about your financial knowledge in doing this way. But I just want to say this. The reason why I bring up that 17 years is this. I haven't sold a property in 17 years.
Mm.
All of the properties I have, I've kept. The property that I lived in before, I've had that, and the other ones that I purchased. And
Mm.
I think my goal in the next year, so I'm going to move, and there's something with this home that's even more because this home is green. This home is AstroTurf. I live in California, and it's solar powered. So when I
Mm.
move from this property, I will charge $200 more a month rent, or a couple hundred
Mm.
dollars a month more rent, and include power in the.
Mm.
I'll include power in the
In the rent.
calculations
Hmm.
because of that. So do you see
Yeah.
that? So then they'll get a separate invoice for power.
Yeah.
So instead of they get it from, it's called Southern California Edison out here, they'll get it from
Hmm.
G. How about this? GT Power. You know what I mean? Like,
Because you generating the power,
I'm
it's your
generating power on
property,
the
your
roof,
solar,
right?
right? Yeah.
Then I can use that on the next home to buy power, and then eventually I'm gonna. And then right now it's 10, but then eventually maybe get a master account where that
Yeah.
they're consolidating all these bills.
Yeah.
But my goal is not to make money doing it. My goal is not to pay the bills doing it.
Hmm.
That's
Exactly.
but and by the way, I'm just saying this so we get these. These are things we cover in an advanced one because if you
Hmm.
start generating power and you can get extra money a month, you can use that to pay down the mortgages and have other
Hmm.
people pay down the mortgages. Then that increases your margin. The more margin you have, you can either reinvest in more properties and keep paying off the other mortgages,
Yeah.
or you can keep acquiring more properties. So
Yeah.
it's just like doing that. So one of the sessions we'll have is we call it playing Monopoly. You don't start off on Boardwalk, but like there's a reason why people don't play me in Monopoly. And there's 5 reasons I walk through them and say, because you do that exact same thing investing.
Mm.
So that's how you become a real estate investor.
Yeah.
But it's very good the way that you're doing it that way. So have you already located a home that you want to? Now I know
We
you asked me a
actually
question.
had one that we were very happy with because we have a very unique situation. I have two
Right,
mothers-in-law that we live with,
right,
and they both we require two full bedrooms on the first floor with a bathroom,
right.
which is not a configuration that's very common. So
Common.
we had found a house that fit everything that we wanted. They were a little overpriced for the market, so
Right,
we were going to come in, at a lower
right,
offer. Somebody came in and gave them an offer, the overpriced offer, because
right,
our market is like a little crazy right now.
right,
So we just found this out yesterday. So we're back to trying to figure out.
right,
And we also don't know, you never know. New Jersey, we have a 3-day attorney review period.
right.
And then also somebody can always drop out if they find out something in inspection that they're not
Yep.
willing to deal with. So we haven't written off that property, but it was basically like a great next move from here because of all the things that we need. So now we're kind of trying to be creative and think about, because market is very tight. It's very good for sellers because there's low inventory.
Yep.
But so we're seeing both sides. As a seller, there's a lot of
Exactly.
activity, but then as a buyer, especially because we have a unique situation, we have to think a little more creatively.
Right.
So we're kind of close to time.
Right.
I love the stuff that we talked about today. If you guys just think about the threads of the types of things George was talking about, there's a thread of really being strategic about what you do with the real estate.
Right.
I think that's tied to, you'll see countless studies that say that one of the biggest indicators of a generational wealth is real estate ownership.
Right.
Because if you think about it, a property is something that as you pay down the mortgage and you have equity in it, you can use that equity for other things.
Yep.
So some people use that to tap into when it's time for college. Some people use that to start a business. Some people use that. So it's like it gives you all of these options for a large amount of money that you can do other things with.
Right.
So we're definitely going to talk more on this topic because I want to get into some of those more advanced things. Because even some of the stuff you were saying today, I was like, never thought of that.
Right. But I want to say this, Thomas,
Like
really quickly though.
yeah.
You're doing the right things, and you see how he and everyone listened. How he said he's looking for a property, found one that was good. But let me tell you how God works. You keep looking at that property, but then have 2 or 3 other ones. I was being overbid on properties, and there was a property that was my third best property. I didn't like it as much. And then I'm going to say this on recorded line. My girlfriend at the time, her name was Kimberly. I was about to say what her maiden name was. And she said, you know what? You keep getting outbid. There's something called the Grove in LA off of Fairfax. And don't laugh at these prices, but 20 years ago, these properties, or 18 years ago, these properties were $400,000. Now they're in the millions. But I was getting outbid because I was just undercutting. I was trying to buy them for $380, and I just kept losing those off. Then my girlfriend at the time, I used to drive neighborhoods to find different ones. And I said, I just don't like the way the entryway is, something like this. Not an investor way of looking at things. I did. She said, you ought to just buy that property. I bought it. Let's say a Monday, I put an offer and I had it accepted, and I put down a down payment, everything. And then right before escrow closed, I came by and it was caught on fire. The back end caught on fire, it had a big thing, fire trucks, the whole bit. The people that had it before, because it was in probate, again, guys, I bought this out of probate. They had to fix and renovate that property, and they put over $100,000 into it, and it looked better than all those other properties that I.
And you still got it for what you. Yeah, I
see God right. So that's why you keep. You keep moving.
Yeah.
You remember I tell that neighbor, don't freeze. We've already talked about this 10 times during the coronavirus. Don't freeze. Make offers. Keep pushing. Don't give up. You do what you do. And then God does what God does.
Yeah,
and then the scripture. The last thing in the scripture in the Bible is that said, people always miss what they said, that all things work together for good, and all these things. Things don't work. God works things out. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to piggyback on everything you're saying, because this whole thing is a faith walk for us, right? All the way to how we're gonna, we have to do the process of switching from one house to the other house when you have 2 senior citizens that you're gonna have to move around. Like we don't know how all that's gonna play out. Right. We don't know, what that next house will look like, but my wife and I have peace about it, because the first house that we saw, which we really liked, ended up not being, what we thought it was going to be, and it was taken under contract. Then the Lord showed us this one that was way better. Right. So we believe that each time He's saying, "Hey, I could do better." Right. I could do better. So if something drops out, we just know that something better is there, right? And that's the way to just keep, like you said. Sometimes the diamond is in the rough, and you get it. And it's amazing. So, and every house we've ever bought, it's been God moving. So I completely concur with everything you said.
Good. And we'll do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then hopefully
Well,
one of the later on calls we'll do something, and also on our calls we'll go over something called deal flow, like looking
mm,
at what's available and how you're going to play it. Like in other words, like
mm,
now I'm not buying 3-unit buildings because now they're all they all cost like two. The
mhm.
ratio of what they cost compared to what I want to comfortably charge someone in rent in California is just
Yes.
too high. So I
Yep.
found other avenues of acquiring properties and then getting the rent that we need, and then
Hmm.
and also building the community. So we'll go
Yep.
over goals in that if you'd like to at our
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah.
And then,
We're
but
gonna
also you got to
drill
write
into
in a few
this.
comments and we'll get it going. All right,
Yeah,
Tom.
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on another episode of Set for Life Conversations with George. If you found value from what you heard today, there's a couple of things we'd like you to do to help us serve you even better. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a question that you want to be answered, drop us a message in the link in the show notes or hit us up on social media. If you are interested in going deeper in any of the topics that George teaches about, even this real estate topic, he touches a lot on in the wealth cycle. One of the best ways to do that is to get one of those books either from the Ready, Set, Grow series. So there's the wealth cycle and there's Set for Life. You can find a link in that for that in the show notes. You also work with him as a financial planner if you want his personal assistance. The details for that will also be included. And then
Sign up
if you
for our
want to
real
learn,
estate class.
he also has real estate classes. Yep, and they're all virtual now, so
Oh yeah,
you can
we're coming
definitely
right
sign
to
up.
your, we're coming right to
Yeah,
your living room.
exactly. And if you just want to learn about George and what he's about, check out his website at www.georgebthompson.com. Thank you once again for joining us, and we are excited to keep sharing stuff with you. We are on this journey with you and feel like we are growing as you grow. Thank you.
All right, God bless you, everybody.